A bunk the width of your shoulders, in a room with 3 other men, on a steel platform 40 miles from the nearest road. He was 20, and he had signed for 28 days. He could not leave. Not for a funeral, not for a birth, not because he changed his mind. 14 years later, the same man clears $210,000 a year and has the authority to stop a $100 million operation with 1 sentence. Almost half the people who take that first hitch never take a second one. And the thing that separates the ones who stay is not toughness. We will get to it. Most people think offshore work is normal work in a strange place. It is not. Onshore, a job is something you go to and come back from. Offshore, the job is the entire world for a month. You sleep, eat, work, argue, and get bored inside the same 200 feet of steel with the same 80 people, and the helicopter that brought you is the only way off. That single fact reorganizes everything, including who gets promoted. Companies are not selecting for the strongest hands. They are selecting for people who are still functional on day 22. Let's start at the bottom. The Roustabout earns about $24 an hour, and because a hitch is 12-hour days for 28 straight days, that comes out near $63,700 a year. Most of them are 19 to 23. You are general labor on the deck. You chip rust and you paint steel and you paint it again, because salt air undoes your work while you sleep. You move supplies off the boat when it comes alongside. You sling loads under the crane. You clean the mud pits, and you go wherever anyone points. You do this in rain, at night, on a surface that moves. Getting in requires a high school diploma, a basic offshore safety certificate, a medical, and the willingness to be gone. Almost half of first hitch roustabouts do not come back for a second, and the reason is rarely the labor. It is the confinement. Here is what nobody tells you. Everyone on that deck is quietly assessing whether you are pleasant to be locked in a box with. A roustabout who is technically excellent and socially exhausting does not get recommended, and a roustabout who is average and easy does. On a rig, temperament is a job skill, and nobody says it out loud. Before the latter goes further, the rotation itself needs explaining, because it shapes every life in this trade. The standard offshore schedule is 28 days on and 28 days off, though 14 and 14 is common in shallower water. On paper it looks extraordinary. You work half the year. In practice, the first week home is spent sleeping and readjusting. The last week is spent dreading the flight back, and the middle 2 weeks are the part you actually own. Men describe it as living 2 separate lives that do not know each other. Your family builds a routine that does not include you and then reassembles itself when you land. And doing that 12 times a year is harder than the work. This is the real reason the wage is what it is. The company is not paying for the labor. It is paying for the 28 days of your life it takes, and does not give back. The roughneck, also called a floor hand, earns around $30 an hour, roughly $81,300 a year on a full rotation. Most are 22 to 28. Now you are on the drill floor, which is the loudest and most dangerous flat surface on the rig. You handle pipe, you make and break connections, you operate the tongs, you work the slips, and every one of those tasks involves a steel object heavy enough to remove a hand. The floor runs on rhythm, and the crew moves as one thing, and a man who is half a second out of time is a hazard rather than a help. Getting here means proving yourself on deck, typically 1 to 2 years, plus well-control awareness training. Attrition drops sharply because the people who could not handle the life already left. The injuries do not drop though. Hands and fingers are the currency of this rung. Here is what nobody tells you. The drill floor is where you learn to read the well by sound and feel, long before you are allowed to touch a control. Roughnecks who pay attention know when something is wrong upstairs before the instruments say so, and drillers hire from that group. Everyone reading this arrives at that rig the same way, and the way in is itself a filter. You fly. There is no boat for personnel on most installations, so you sit in a helicopter over open water for 1 to 2 hours wearing an immersion suit. Before you are allowed on that aircraft, you have to pass underwater escape training, and it is exactly what it sounds like. You are strapped into a mock helicopter cabin, lowered into a pool, and inverted, and you have to find your reference point, release your harness, push out a window, and surface. Then you do it again, in darkness. Then you do it wearing a rebreather. People fail this. Not many, but the ones who do usually fail because they let go of their reference hand. And once you are upside down underwater in the dark, with no reference, you have no idea which way the door is. The training exists because helicopters that go into water tend to invert, since the engine and rotor sit on top. Every offshore worker in the world has done this course and repeats it every 4 years, and almost every one of them will tell you the same thing, which is that the first inversion is the moment they found out whether they were suited to this life. Nothing on the rig itself is as frightening as that pool, and that is deliberate. The Derrickhand earns about $38 an hour, roughly $102,400 a year. Most are 26 to 34. You climb, you work in the derrick above the drill floor, on a small platform, guiding the top of each pipe stand as it comes out of the hole. You are harnessed, you are high, and you are handling a swinging length of steel in wind. You are also responsible for the mud system, which is the least glamorous and most important job on the rig, because drilling mud is what holds the pressure of the formation down. You mix it, you monitor its weight, and you notice when the volume in the pits changes for no reason. Getting here means years on the floor, plus specific training. Here is what nobody tells you. The mud pit volume is the earliest warning of a well going wrong. If more fluid is coming out than you are pumping in, the well is pushing back. The Derrickhand is often the first person on the rig in a position to notice. And there are people alive because a Derrickhand said something about a number that did not add up. There is a piece of equipment that everything above this rung revolves around, and most people have heard the name without knowing what it does. The blowout preventer is a stack of hydraulic valves sitting on the wellhead, and on a deep water rig it sits on the seabed thousands of feet below. Its job is to close the well if pressure from the formation gets past the mud. Some of the valves squeeze around the pipe. One of them, the blind shear ram, is designed to cut straight through the drill pipe and seal the hole completely. It is the last barrier. It is also the barrier that exists because every other barrier has already failed, which means by the time it is needed, the situation is already unrecoverable without it. Everyone offshore knows what it is. Very few people outside the industry understand that it is not a safety feature. It is the end of the line. The assistant driller earns about $47 an hour, roughly $127,900 a year. Most are 30 to 38. You move off the floor and into the doghouse, the control cabin, standing beside the driller and learning the screens. You are watching hook load, pump pressure, rate of penetration, and mud volume, and you are learning what normal looks like so that abnormal announces itself. You also run the crew, which means you are now responsible for men who were your equals last month. Getting here needs floor and derrick experience plus formal well control certification, which has to be renewed, and which people do fail. Here is what nobody tells you. This is the rung where the job stops being physical and starts being anticipatory, and some outstanding roughnecks discover they hate it. Standing still watching numbers for 12 hours is a completely different profession from working pipe, and not everyone who was good at one is suited to the other. The driller earns around $58 an hour, roughly $158,600 a year with bonus. Most are 35 to 45. You run the well. Every piece of equipment on that drill floor answers to your controls, and every person on it answers to your voice. You decide weight on bit, rotation speed, and pump rate, and you are balancing speed against the risk of damaging the hole or losing control of pressure. When something goes wrong, you have seconds, and the correct action is often counterintuitive and always expensive. Getting here means years as an assistant, plus current well control certification at supervisory level. Attrition is near zero, because nobody who reaches this rung leaves voluntarily. Here is what nobody tells you. The driller is under constant commercial pressure that never appears in any job description. A drilling rig costs an enormous amount per day, and every hour spent being careful is money. The good drillers are the ones who can absorb that pressure and still stop. The industry's worst days have all involved someone who could not. On the 20th of April 2010, at about 10 at night, a rig called the Deepwater Horizon was finishing a well called Macondo, about 40 miles off the coast of Louisiana. The rig was owned by Transocean and drilling under contract to BP. There were 126 people aboard. Earlier that same day, executives from both companies had flown out to congratulate the crew on 7 years without a lost time injury. That evening, gas came up the well, reached the deck, found an ignition source, and exploded. The blowout preventer did not seal. 11 men died, all of them on or near the drill floor, and none of their bodies were ever recovered. 17 more were injured. The rig burned for 36 hours and sank. The well flowed into the Gulf for 87 days. Every offshore worker hired since has been trained on that night, and the industry changed its rules because of it. The 11 men were doing exactly the jobs on the ladder you have just heard described. The tool pusher, and above him the offshore installation manager, earns $185,000 to $210,000 a year, and on deepwater units more. Most are 45 and up. You stop running the well and start running the installation. The tool pusher oversees drilling operations across all crews. The installation manager has final authority over everything and everyone on that structure, including the client. If he says the operation stops, it stops, and no commercial argument overrides it. He is also legally responsible for the lives of every person on board in an emergency. Getting here requires the full ladder plus command level certification and, in practice, a reputation that survives scrutiny. Here is what nobody tells you. The entire value of this rung is the ability to say no to the person paying for the rig. That is what the money buys. An installation manager who cannot do that under pressure is not being paid $200,000 for his technical knowledge, and everyone on the rig knows within a week which kind he is. There is a path off this ladder that most of the trade eventually takes. Onshore drilling, well site supervision, and drilling engineering consultancy all draw from offshore crews, and they pay $120,000 to $200,000 while letting you sleep at home. Almost everyone leaves eventually, and the reason is nearly always the same. It is not the danger, and it is not the work. It is the 5th or 6th year of missing half of everything. Roustabout, $63,700. Roughneck, $81,300. Derrickhand, $102,400. Assistant driller, $127,900. Driller, $158,600. Installation manager, $210,000. Nearly half of first Hitch workers never return for a second. The ladder is short, it is paid the whole way, and every rung is bought with the same currency, which is 28 days at a time of a life that is happening somewhere else without you. Next, every level of a firefighter.